So, welcome to this afternoon session. This could be a hard session after lunch, but we will try to keep you alive. And then, well, my name is Bruno Zani. It was recorded several times because I'm the bridge between Unibon and AFPA. I'm from Unibo. I was, in my first life, the Dean of the Faculty of Psychology here. Then, in the second life, now I'm in the AFPA team, and for that I'm in between. Okay, so thank you to be here to our session, and now Sabine, the Director of AFPA, will present the session.
Hello, welcome to you all, also for this roundtable on age work, policy briefs and policy impact. We have learned a lot of policy briefs this morning. The policy briefs have been mentioned a lot of times, and you will see, Frank, even for your question, we had not a solution, but we might have a proposal for what you said this morning. Can I have the first slide, please? I would like to introduce the panelists to you. So, we have David Josine from Unibo. Annalisa Senator from the Open, Francisco González from Valora, Christian Vasquez from the University of Sheffield, Gesine Schade from Harold Better, Emmanuel Abouaglier from the Karolinski Institute, but also from the NTU now. And then we have Richard Wynn from the European Network for Work Health Promotion.
Workplace
promotion. And online we have Christine Marking from EFPA. Christine, do you hear us?
Yes, I can.
And then we have Tom Vandale, our expert and external viewer. Tom, can you hear us?
I'm here as well, yes. Happy to be here.
Very much. What you see here now are not all of them, but most of the contributors to the policy briefs. So those who have contributed to and authors for the policy briefs was the University of Bologna in at least three policy briefs, University of Sheffield, the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, my organization, the European Federation of Psychologists Associations, the European Network for Workplace Health Promotion, Valora Prevention, Karolinska Institute, and the Open and Hello Better. You have received questions, and we will listen to the answers later. I just want to briefly explain that the briefs have been internally reviewed by most of the partners under the expertise of Christine and Richard, and we have had two extraordinary external reviewers, and these were, and I have to go back now, Rob Anderson from Eurofound, and we have who is online, Tom Vandale, who is from the Thomas More University of Antwerp in Belgium. So that is my task is done. I only leave the floor now to the moderator, Richard Wynn.
Do we want to describe briefly?
Yeah. Yes, of course. We want to go through the policy briefs. We want to present the policy briefs.
Okay. Just briefly to present, because we are already presented mentioned this morning, but just to say something more. So we have the recommendation on digital intervention for employee well-being and teamwork, and this policy brief is addressed to health practitioner, HR director, manager of SMEs and public organizations, with recommendation on digital-based interventions to improve employee well-being and teamwork. The second was selected intervention based on workers' need. It's a yes. Why and how to ensure participation. And this policy brief is intended for human resources and occupational health professionals, managers and union representatives, and introduces the importance of promoting and protecting mental health in the workplace through workplace interventions. The third was making room for mental health, recommendation from psychologists to managers, and this briefing proposed several practical recommendations for action to effectuate a mentally healthy work environment based on each work outcomes. The fourth was mental health and well-being in small and medium-sized enterprises, reflecting the needs of SMEs in intervention, design, and implementation. And this policy brief summarizes the barriers and opportunity of introducing workplace mental health and well-being intervention to SMEs. It also set out a number of recommendations relevant to policymakers, occupational health services, professionals, and owner-operator of SMEs. The fifth is training for workplace mental health promotion, and this policy brief provides complete recommendations addressing groups responsible for training workplace actors on mental health and well-being issues at EU, European, and national levels in order to ensure that appropriate training is provided to all relevant stakeholders. This was the first batch of the policy brief, and they are now all in English, all in Italian, and 4 of them in Norwegian. The last one is also in Spanish. The second and the fifth was also in Spanish. So they are in different languages, and as you have heard, they are tailored because they are addressed to different stakeholders. So they are tailored to stakeholders. The last 5.
So the second batch, which we would like to present as other policy briefs, the sixth one is the role of social partners in mental health and well-being in small and medium-sized enterprises. The policy brief discusses the role that social partners play in influencing and developing policy on mental health in the workplace, as well as improving the practice and implementation of workplace mental health interventions. The second one was improving workplace mental health, the role of EU policymakers. Building on the outcomes of the HWORK project, this policy brief provides EU-level policymakers with concrete it provides EU-level policymakers with concrete recommendations to foster mentally healthy work environments and facilitate cooperation between EU member states and relevant stakeholders. The next one was a very interesting one on economic benefits of promoting mental health in SMEs and public organizations. It proposes strategies and calls for action to demonstrate the economic benefits of promoting mental health. Maybe the battery is. So where was I? So the brief demonstrates the economic benefits of promoting mental health in the workplace, and recommendations target policymakers, organizational leaders, stakeholders interested in maximizing the economic value of workplace mental health promotion. The ninth one was the social media and mental health. I think the battery is. Yes, I will continue like this. The social media addresses the impact of social media on workplace mental health, presenting recommendations to leverage the positive aspects and mitigate potential negative impacts. The 10th one was implementing artificial intelligence for promoting well-being in organization. This policy brief examines the transformative potential of AI in promoting employee mental health and outlines opportunities and challenges in exploiting AI applications to create supportive work environments. And the 11th one, which is in progress, is implementing mental health at the workplace. And this is addressed recommendations for health insurance in the EU.
It's not stable.
And aims to provide recommendations to health insurance companies in the European Union to enhance workplace mental health support. Health insurance companies and trade unions have a crucial role to play in promoting mental health in the workplace, as it is in line with the aim to promote general well-being and reduce healthcare costs. So I wish you an interesting discussion, and I leave the floor to Richard, who is going to play the role of moderator.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I be heard from here?
Yeah, we need to.
Please.
This one, yeah? Okay, is that better? Hello?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Richard Wynne. I'm an ex-director of a company called Work Research Centre based in Dublin in Ireland. But for many, many years, I've been involved with the European Network for Workplace Health Promotion, which is a trans-European network. Which is a trans-European network devoted to promoting the health of workers, health and well-being of workers across the European workplace. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the issue of policy briefs is quite difficult, I think, for many people here in the room who are coming from an academic and a scientific background. There is no doubt that the science that has been done in the project at HWork is of the highest order. It's very, very good quality, and it will make an impact within the academic circle for which much of it is actually targeted. The problem, I think, facing practice is that you need to take information from this particular setting and translate it either by the people who have produced it or for people who can use it in a different form, so that policy, particularly from the point of view of representative organizations like government, and practice from the point of view of workplaces themselves, can be facilitated. As Frank indicated earlier on this morning, much of the time, us academics are not believed, even though we might have very solid information. We also don't have the lingo to convince people from the other settings. And that is the challenge that we have faced in developing these policy briefs. I think most of the people who authored them would have had no problem producing 20 or 30 pages, but they struggled to produce 3.
Yeah.
I think that's the essence of the problems that we have. My colleague Christine Marking and I spent a lot of time trying to, shall we say, encourage people to be briefer and to be more direct. And I'm going to ask Christine if she wants to have another word on this particular issue of translation between research and policy. Christine.
Thank you, Richard. I'm not sure I'll be exactly addressing that point, but I have 3 points I'd like to make to hopefully help set the scene of this session a little bit more. And the first relates to the actual concept of policy, because I think it's important to be aware of the many shapes and forms that policy can have. It can be binding and prescriptive. It can also be non-binding and describe the desired outcome, but leave the ways and means to obtain this outcome open to the players involved. And then there are many other measures which can be seen as policies, such as initiatives aiming to stimulate cooperation in certain fields, or even internal company initiatives, which can prepare the ground for more formal or binding policies at a later stage. And HWork has opted to take a broad view and addresses all of these, which of course makes it more challenging. The second point relates to the actual levels where policy is being developed, because this can be international, EU level, national, regional, local, as well as very local in the workplace itself. And in the policy briefs addressing policymakers and social partners, we've mainly focused on EU level policies. Not because the others aren't important, but it was beyond the scope of the project to really address 27 countries and all levels within those. That's quite a different project, really. But we do believe that the policy recommendations generated by HWork are also relevant at national and other levels. And beyond the briefings aimed at policymakers and social partners, we have a lot of briefs, as you've seen from all the titles, at workplace practice and how those can be as mental health friendly as possible. My third point, and maybe that's the most important one, it relates to the fact that policies are not developed in a vacuum. Many stakeholders are involved. They advocate their views because they want policies to be developed and take account of their views and everything they would like to see. We have pressure groups, we have managers, we have the media, we have SMEs, and this is why HWork policy briefs address many of these as well. So we've created quite a complex kind of thing. Policy is a difficult concept as such. It's developed at many levels and it's not developed in a vacuum. So taking all these things into account, I think we should see HWork itself as a stakeholder, because it's clearly advocating the development of good workplace mental health policy. And finally, let me say, I believe that the outcomes of all this work can certainly help influence policy in practice. It's my daily job to do so, and I can see the relevance of what's come out of this project. But it's now really up to us to ensure that the project has maximum impact and that it will effectuate positive change. And I think I'll leave it at that. I think I'll probably speak later on the actual policy briefs I've been involved with. Thanks.
Thank you, Christine. I just want to have a quick word about how we're going to manage the rest of the session. We have about 7 or 8 people, including Christine, who will all have to address 3 questions. We have to do all of this within an hour, so it's going to be quite a gallop through all of these policies. The 3 questions are, what are the next steps for the policy briefs that you've been involved in? How should the policy briefs be handed over or exploited after the lifetime of the project? How can they best be publicised? And our third question is, what are the biggest, most important policy lessons to be learned from the policy briefs? Now, we're going to take the first 2 questions together because they are different facets of the same issue. And each of us will have 3 minutes, no more, no less, to answer these questions. We will then go on a second round where we will answer the third question. And again, you will have 3 minutes, no more, no less. According to my timetable, we should be finished at 15:10.
Okay.
And that will allow us 5 or 10 minutes for questions. Okay? So I'm going to begin on my left. I'm going to ask Davide to have his 3 minutes on the first 2 questions.
Okay.
Not working.
You cannot hear me?
I can hear you, but...
Yeah. Better now? I hear now, yes? Okay. Okay, just please allow me some time to thank you, Richard, and of course the FPA team. I'm really honored to be part of this panel, also because developing these policy briefs has really been a challenge for us, and so it's good to share our experience. Well, in terms of the first question, I think it's very important to discuss the next steps of the policy briefs, because of course they are crucial outcomes of our HWork project. And I'm going to say something obvious, but I think the first and foremost next step that the policy briefs have to do is to be read, because this is very important, because I think they are there, they are online, available on the HWork platform, but they are there waiting for someone to read them, policymakers, employers, organizations, managers, and so on. But I think we should not be passive in this. I think we should adopt a proactive approach, because I think if I'm a manager in a company and I just don't know that the platform is there, that the policy briefs are there, probably I will never find them and I will never read them. So, for example, when it comes to the policy briefs that we developed in our Unibo team, which were the ones about the digital interventions, artificial intelligence, and social media and mental health. So the selection of the topics, it was not by chance, because of course our team has some expertise, for example, in human factor psychology, and for example we have other projects and new projects, international ones, about, for example, technologies in work and organization. So I think this new projects will provide new opportunities for meeting relevant stakeholders for new occasions, public events, for example, conferences, congresses. And those will be, I think, great opportunities to engage with relevant peoples that need to know about our policy views, specifically related to our topics, of course. So I think this is a first point. How many minutes? No, really?
Yes.
Okay. So I think it's very important.
Also the microphone shows
Yes.
Yeah.
This is not working.
I think use this one.
Yeah, so in general, to sum up, I want to say that since our work is a collaborative work, we always interact with people, professional communities, and especially as work and organizational psychologists, we often have dialogues with companies. I think it's very important to adopt this kind of proactive approach and to engage with them in order to disseminate and exploit the policy briefs. That's my point.
Thank you, David. Let us move on quickly to Francisco.
Okay. 3 minutes more. Hello, how are you? Thank you, David, because I mean, you have said something that I mean is related to what I wanted to transmit. Because I mean, to contextualize, Valora Prevención, we are a company that we assess other companies about health and safety at work. So for us, it's very easy. Well, it's very easy. I mean, we work closely, or we work with small and medium enterprises every day. So, I mean, sometimes part of our main work is just to assess our health and safety, or I mean, assess some different trainings or actions or whatever. So I think you know, the policy briefs is well, I don't know if managers are gonna read the policy briefs or you know, the companies, but at least, you know, professionals that work in that sector, I think is a good starting point. I mean, we can collect there a lot of reasons to transmit to companies. So I think they are very useful. And for example, I don't know in other countries, but in Spain, you know, there is a recent publication of the Spanish strategy of health and safety at work for the next 4 years. So, I mean, it's a perfect frame now to talk about all that things, because they talk a lot of things among other things about the promotion or about how is the mental health rated in the work environment. So I don't know. I mean, it's true that sometimes, I mean, when at least in Spain again, when something is not mandatory, it's not easy to make others understand that is good, that is important. And I mean, you have talked several times during the meeting today that, I mean, sometimes it's very difficult. I mean, because here it's very easy. I mean, because we all understand, you know, the importance of the promote mental health at work. I mean, the interventions, everything. But sometimes there is a big gap with the small and medium enterprises, especially. And I think, I mean, the professional will have to do our best to make themselves understand why it's better, why it's good investing, just to make that, I mean, to invest money in all that action. So I don't know, maybe I think the best way just to brief, you know, the best way I think is, you know, try to use all that tools and all that policy briefs, I mean, between professionals or health and safety practitioners and all that people.
Thank you.
3 minutes.
Can we turn to Chris?
Okay.
It's going to be like a musical chair.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great.
Okay, so we were involved in the policy brief related to employee participation, and we think that participation is essential for implementing, developing, and evaluating interventions, because if employees participate actively in the design of the intervention, in expressing what are the main concerns, interventions can be more tailored to their own needs, and that can increase the likelihood to these interventions are successful. So in terms of the next steps, I follow Davide. We need to make a special effort in communicating and disseminating our work
It's true, we make this product, we made this brief policy brief for organizations, but the idea is those policies are read by managers especially. And also I would like to echo Maggie. We also need to target people that they decided to not participate. We need to embrace that. And if we want to foster participation, we need to pay a special attention in why people is not participating in our interventions and try to promote their participation, understanding their main concerns. Also, I think we need to be creative in that regard. Here in the HWork project, we have been using a lot of digital tools. So I think maybe we could use like social networks, try to be creative and discover how employees can be more active in communicating their experiences at work. And that could be very useful for us to know what can we do to improve their work environment. Also, something that already other colleagues here already said, the importance of mid-range managers, because they play a pivotal point in the organization hierarchy. So their involvement in communicating our interventions or the initiatives that the organization can have can foster employee participation and their active involvement in the interventions. Yes, perfect.
Turn it off.
Yeah.
Annalisa.
Of course. Okay. Our work package made a contribution on policy briefs entitled Social Media and Mental Health at Work. Okay, I knew it. And Mental Health at Work, recommendations for managers. And we did it because our role within the project is part of our daily work as a communication agency. And okay. This is my next topic. And just to give you some context, the Open is a communication agency or open group that is a social cooperative, increasingly attentive to mental health and well-being of its workers. In fact, Open Group collaborates with Unibo psychology department on a project to monitor and assess the stress level of its workers. After COVID pandemic, Open also created a psychological assistance service for its workers. And every day, Open Group involves its workers and employees in online communication activities and social media contents, not only to give visibility to their work and jobs, for sure, but also to give visibility to their stories, making them real ambassador of the cooperative. And I'm telling you this because Open Group to me is the perfect example of workplace reality who can spread and promote the HWork policy briefs, not only internally, but also in the cooperative sector, that is our sector, we belong, among different leader organizations. And for the second question, let's be honest, not everyone listened to good advice, but maybe almost everyone listened to good stories. So for us, the best way to promote and publicize the HWork policy briefs is to use them within one's own organization or company, and then tell to public, to the external audience, the effectiveness, the actual effective of the tools on employees' well-being and mental health. And we can do this kind of storytelling by different contents, by different, through different social media channels, but also websites and newsletter. And moreover, given the possibilities of today's major social media platforms, different companies can also do something collaborative together in terms of contents, social media tools. For example, bringing together different workers who benefited from the use of the policy briefs in their organization and doing something very I don't know what to say, very strong in terms of storytelling, okay, and engaging a mixed and potentially broad audience for this.
Thank you very much. We're right on time, 6 seconds to spare. 15.
Thank you. So our company was involved in writing the policy brief for insurance companies. We still are involved in writing that policy brief, but basically they are the ones we are investing, and they are also a very close partner for our companies right now. So we are producing mental health therapy that's online and it's paid for by the German insurance companies. So they are someone that we work very closely together, and they are someone we are addressing. So that's also for the first question, the next steps for the policy brief that we have been involved in is to address those companies, those close partners we have, and to share what we learned in the project with them. And yeah.
I think this may be working now.
Okay. But yeah, and that would also include for us to publish and translate the policy brief to German for those companies. But yeah, in general, for sharing the policy briefs with other companies and with, in general, our network is super important. It was said before, we had this great collaboration here with lots of people from different networks and who already know a lot of different stakeholders and are different stakeholders, and to make use of that is extremely important, what we think. And then another thing that was also mentioned before is to have this more participatory approach also here with the policy briefs, when we're spreading them to the people who are involved, and to maybe provide workshops or webinars for the people who we are addressing in those policy briefs.
Thank you very much, Cassini. And I think we have that working again.
I'll try that. No. Yeah, but I will speak to the economic benefits policy brief that was written as a business case to motivate why investments are needed in promoting mental health in the workplace. And to answer the question about the next steps for the PD, I really thought about this question, and I think in fact I met an old economist, a friend of mine, and he saw me and was like, hey, I've been doing this thing that you are doing now for the past 40 years, but no changes have happened, right? But that was probably because what we have done were not freely available. And as time went by, economists made some of these tools freely available, as we have done with HWork. And still we see that the way of thinking about investments and resources with mental health hasn't changed that much. So to answer the question of what are the next steps, I think what should be done is trying to, as we have done, train people on how to probably use these tools effectively in managing or thinking about how to invest. And also, I would like to see how the user experiences are and feedbacks on all the platforms we have created, because they are very important going forward. And if we create something that these people are not using effectively, I think we'll go back to the same scenario of we've seen this done before and that's it. So feedbacks are very, very important, and we should publicize these tools even more and make people aware and conscious of the tools, use them, we get the feedback, we modify, because it will be a mental health promoting activity, not just a one-stop thing. And then also, storytelling part is a beautiful approach where we tell success stories of what people did, how they used the tool to inform decision-making in their workplaces. And the beautiful stories will encourage others also, I think, to even jump on the bandwagon and probably use it more. So these are some of the things I thought about.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Storytelling is emerging as a theme. And now we go to the greatest storyteller of all, which is Christian Markman.
Too much honor, Richard, unless you don't mean it as a compliment. I've been EFPA was involved with 2 policy briefs. One was the recommendations from psychologists to managers, and the second one was about EU policy recommendations. By the way, maybe it's also important to mention the fact that both Richard and I were involved with another deliverable of the project, which was specifically addressing EU policy recommendations as well. So there's a lot more of policy recommendations in another part of the project. We've actually already been quite active in this because as we were developing these recommendations, we had a few good opportunities at EU policy level to insert references and lessons learned from H work. The Commission, European Commission, who basically sets all the kind of things that happen at the EU level, was at that point devising a new initiative on mental health. So we took the opportunity to directly feed into that, using H work as an example and underlining the importance of mental health at work. The other thing we did was, in a response to the actual initiative when it came out, mention H work and its recommendations. There's a European health policy platform bringing together the main health players at European level. We've published H work on that platform for all those people to see. And more recently, the Commission has called for good practice examples, and we've used H work as a good practice example. So that's basically the road we're going to go on. We're going to identifying hooks and policy entry points to find ways of getting H work and its recommendations noted. The other thing is we are going to be compiling very targeted mailing lists and audiences for the various policy briefs to see where we can best publicize them and how we can best reach those people. And we have to make sure that all the valid work that has been done until now is not lost. And I think this is basically it. Just continue what we're doing because there's plenty of opportunities at the moment for both these topics. Thank you. I think that was less than 3 minutes, Richard.
37 seconds less. Thank you.
It's only 7 seconds.
Okay, I'll just tell you briefly about my thoughts on the first 2 questions. We were involved in writing 2 of them and basically in supporting the writing of the rest of them as well in various ways. I'm taking a more practical view. I'm trying to view this in terms of what are literally the next steps that you take. And the first thing I would say is that at transnational and at national level, that you identify your target audience. Sometimes we are far too inclined to just broadcast information out into the ether without targeting it at specific groups, at specific times and in specific ways. So at transnational level, we will be talking about agencies such as EU OSHA, we're the Health and Safety Agency, Eurofound. We'll be talking about the 2 main Directorate Generals involved, DG Sante and DG Employment. We'll be talking about the major social partners at EU level, ETUC and Business Europe. And we will do the same thing at the same level in Ireland and within our other member countries in ENWHP. Next thing is, I would say, is to contact them directly. Don't just write a letter or send an email. Knock on their doors, as they say in Ireland, see the whites of their eyes, and you'll be able to engage them with what you have to say in that situation. And thirdly, I would say offer to help them implement the recommendations that you have to make. Many people don't have the time, would like to do something but don't have the support. And if you can support them in implementation, that will go down well also. A fourth thing I would say in more general, this is in relation to the second question, is encourage other people to take ownership of these policy briefs and these recommendations. You won't be able to do it all anyway, even if you had a clear run of it. You have to give it to others and they have to own it. And that should be the goal of much of your dissemination efforts from here on in. So use networks. Continue with your targeted communications. The project ends in, I think, tomorrow, is it, or the day after? Communications and dissemination should not. It should be carried on as part of your daily work until such time as it has some impact. A simple thing, all of the various platforms and tools and policy briefs should be incorporated into the websites of all of our organisations so that they have a life beyond the half-life that is the project websites. There are some of the things that I think should be happening next. Lastly, to echo one thing Tom said earlier on, take advantage of other publicity events and opportunities, particularly those that are beyond your normal routines. Okay, I think that's the first round of questions done. Our second question, our last question is, what are the biggest and the most important policy lessons to be learned from the policy briefs themselves? And as I'm speaking, I'm going to continue on, and that'll be me finished for the day. The first thing is, I would note that when talking about policy, I think you've got to look at the big picture of what you're feeding the policy into. The context for mental health at work has changed and is rapidly changing. There are new possibilities for implementation, particularly using new technologies, for example, and artificial intelligence. But there are also new threats which are offered by these technologies. There are new working conditions taking place. One of the areas which we have done a lot of work in over the years is teleworking. And the levels of teleworking have gone through the roof since COVID and are being maintained at very high levels in many countries. It hasn't gone back to what it was before COVID. There's a greater awareness in society of mental health issues than was ever the case. It is talked about more. This makes it somewhat easier, perhaps, to get the message across. And I know this is somewhat controversial amongst my health and safety colleagues, but I think that the issue of mental health in the workplace is superseding that of physical health and safety, as most of the health and safety issues are resolved over time. So I think we need to take account of that context is the first thing I would say. There's a need for a targeted approach to mental health at work with different players and stakeholders. People have different interests, and not all of the players have the same interest. And I think the messages have to be targeted to them. A third thing is that if you were talking about policy lessons and making recommendations, don't ask people to do what they can't do, what is beyond their competence. It's very easy to say everybody should do everything, but that's not terribly effective. You need to say that the social partners can do certain kinds of things, the people in the ministry can do certain kinds of things, the people who are professionals in the field can do other kinds of things, and so on. So tailor your messages very closely and don't go beyond what it is possible for them to do. I'll just finish with one more thing, and that is that coordination between the players is paramount. At one perspective, the problem here with mental health in the workplace is you're bringing together two areas of endeavour which normally don't speak to each other. One is occupational health, and the other is public health. And again, the interest of both of these and the practices of both of these disciplines does not necessarily coincide. So you need to address this particular issue. How do you promote coordination between the two major forces or drives towards health in the workplace? Okay, I'm going to go in reverse order. Christine, have you some thoughts on the last question?
Yes, for me it was very interesting to note while writing the two briefs how much is going on, in fact, and how many opportunities there are. Obviously, at the beginning of this session, when I was allowed to have a couple of thoughts, it's very complex because of the level, because of the breadth of the concept of policy, etc. So there are challenges, but I must say there's a lot going on. There are many, many opportunities to insert the notion of the importance of good mental health at work. There is much more policy attention for this. I've been lobbying or advocating mental health policies at EU level since the early 90s. So I can compare to what's going on now and what's going on at the time. So that's something which is really hopeful. You have to be very creative. You should not just look for mental health at work as such initiatives. You should try and tag on to initiatives that are ongoing and which may have an impact on that. So you have to be creative in how you approach it. You have to work in partnership. I fully agree with Richard that you can't do everything. You can't do everything by yourself, and you also can't ask of others to do it all. You really have to work together and make sure that you make use of the strengths and weaknesses of the other organizations weaknesses, I mean, could be covered by others. So really work in partnership. Forming partnerships is, in my experience, the best way of getting somewhere, especially when you want to influence direct policy, a binding policy, and you can really work your way, you know, just not mental health organizations, but also other organizations that are really important, carers, managers. Age work as such would be a very good coalition, in fact, to start or keep working on this kind of issue together. It's quite a good example. And I think that being creative and really trying to look for possibilities to kind of sell the concept of mental health at work is the most important lesson I've learned.
Thank you, Christine. I'm assured it's working again. Is it?
No.
Right, okay. I think we'll stick with it.
I should go?
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the most important lessons I learned, I think, when it came to the writing of these economic brief, it was basically about the interpretation of what results we got. And I could sense from even our members and also that reviewed the brief that we have a different way of thinking about the economics of what should be done and what should not be done. So there was the issue of, okay, now this is how much we are putting in, and then we are getting that back, which tells us the level of the thinking that both psychologists have and also the economists have, or the HR people have. So it goes back to the basic values and norms within the companies that Frank talked about today, which I think psychologists should be ready to shape or reshape their thinking, whereby they would rather the businesses receive these economic indicators as a way to restructure what sort of resources they use and where to move things, move one resource to support another resource to make sure that the health promotion activities are still ongoing, even though it doesn't necessarily bring a huge profit thinking out of the whole activity. So we should look at the whole situation as how do we move resources? Now we know the structure of resources we have. How do we repackage our ideas? How do we repackage our thinking so that we can do even more with a human-centric approach? Instead of looking at, okay, these are billions, and we put it in, we want to back. So I think this is a very important lesson, and also a call to us as practitioners and researchers to send a reversal message in the way HR people think, business leaders think, economists, all these shiny shoe guys think.
Thank you, Emmanuel. 15.
Okay. So I think for us, there are two main points for what are the most important policy lessons from those policy briefs that were written as part of the project. And basically one was that for them to really have an impact, there's always going to be a big need for collaboration, and not just when we distribute them, but also to actually implement any of the suggestions that were made. There's always going to be collaboration in between people from enterprise, small to medium enterprises, but also like the people who are the experts in the field, which are you mostly. Yeah, so that was one point that was a big lesson from this. And then the other point is also more from the economic perspective, that we need to consider those factors for anything to be implemented. Because it's great if we have a lot of great ideas and a lot of great suggestions that work, but if there's no economic background there, it's not going to happen. So that's also related to the storytelling. Like, we have to consider that when we package what we want to promote.
Annalisa.
The most important lesson we've learned from H-Work policy briefs maybe is that today we cannot ignore anymore that every workplace is a complex context because it's made up of different people, personalities, feelings, needs. So an organization, every company has to take this complexity into account. So disseminating best practices to break the stigma associated with the mental health problems at work, but also outside of the work, and providing useful tools to help employees to become more aware individuals, but also healthier workers. And we thought that H-Work policy briefs could be the perfect starting point to do this journey, because this is what we are describing to you today. And right now, this kind of pathway should be mandatory for every workplace. For us.
Thank you.
Use this one. I think so. Yeah. Yeah. From our work package, we also have like 3 main lessons learned. The first one is a lesson learned from our own project. Like we started this project with a plan to do these interventions, to implement this intervention normally in a normal conditions, face to face, as traditional as been done before, but the pandemic hit and we had to adapt to this new environment. And we did, we adapt our interventions to be hybrid, for example, to be virtual, or some of them, they has to be face-to-face because the organization continue working. So I think we can take that learning and apply to our policy brief as well. Try to adapt to these different new environments. Try to use the virtual environment, social networks to try to disseminate our policy brief. I think this is super important and it's a learning from our own practice in the H-Work project. The second one is more related to sustainability. We, again, from our project, we understand that make others to participate in our initiatives, for example, and implement this policy brief, that require effort. That require effort from our side to be active in communicating our own policy brief, but also required to adapt again to the different audience, as Richard said, and know our audience. What are the main concerns? Is about performance, for example? Is that the main concern regarding mental health and well-being? Is the economic impact in the company? Or is something else? Is the social responsibility, for example, of being more popular within the population? So we need to know that we need to adapt our own practices, and we need to use those additional channels to communicate our policies.
Thank you, Chris. Much is clear.
Thank you. Okay, well, the lessons I think we have learned is, first of all, is what I'd say authorities' commitment, because I don't know, I think they have the power, they have the resources, I mean, to create some policies or to publish some different campaigns to promote mental health. You know, there are some examples like campaigns against accidents, car accidents, or cancer, or smoking, or whatever. So, I mean, there are some examples, and at the same level, I mean, at the same level, in the same way, but in different level. I mean, if the managers awareness, I mean, if they are conscious about the importance of promoting, or not only mental health, you know, maybe just to create a better place to work. And especially if they are aligned with the social agents, I think, you know, it's going to be very easy to make some take some actions and to do some interventions there and training other programs. So I think it's very important related with our head, that, I mean, the evaluation, I think it's very important to listen to the final users. I mean, they have a lot of things to share, a lot of value comments, because, I mean, sometimes, I don't know, maybe, I mean, you have to improve the interventions or trainings or whatever. And I think it's very useful, I mean, if we involve in all the process. Always investing in mental health is always good, of course. I mean, it's better investing in prevention than in correct some things that can happen. I don't know, and I think maybe we can put the focus on not only in small or medium enterprises, but maybe in the business associations or some other organization that maybe they have more power to I don't know, to influence in that company. So, I mean, we should use the new technologies, including artificial intelligence, social networks, whatever. I mean, it's a cost effectiveness, a way to do some different intervention. Although there is, I mean, it's true that there are a lot of challenges that, I mean, so that now we are overwhelmed by, internet trainings, internet process, questionnaires, etc. So I don't know, maybe there will be original things, different things to do that promotion. And it's very important, I think, to trying to adapt the training campaigns for the different companies, because it's not the same big company, medium company, small company, and I think the tools that we have developed here, I think, is a powerful tool to help the professional people, the practitioners to adapt training there. Try to convince managers that, it's not so difficult to take some actions in the companies.
Thank you, Francisco. David.
Well, of course, I can relate to all the previous points, but maybe one general takeaway I would like to mention. I think it's important to realize that mental health matters to policy, and policy matters to mental health. And this is important if we think that policy has the potential to shape the culture, basically. So sometimes when things are part of policies, they become also parts of cultures in organizations, communities, even nations. So I think in this sense, policy can be an important strategy or way to influence the culture and to change the culture that currently exists in terms of about workplace mental health in general, I would say. So it can also be a way to break the stigma that still surrounds workplace mental health nowadays. And this is one of the main reasons why I think policy should prioritize workplace mental health, also because it has economic impacts, as we have seen. And I think another lesson which is important to mention from the policy briefs is that they highlight that we need to take an holistic approach towards workplace mental health, and this really comes from our project about multi-level intervention. So we know that we have to approach mental health in the workplace in a systemic way, but also we need to work at the societal level, at the policy level. And I think we also need more, let's say, stronger legal frameworks for this. So this is another lesson, I guess. Okay,
David, thank you for that. If I may ask just one final sort of question or thought or recommendation. I was asked the question, what's in a name? Why do we call it mental health? It's not terribly attractive to a lot of people. Why don't we call it improving workplace communications, which is of great interest to a lot of managers. You still make the same interventions and you have the same impact on mental health, and you have a better chance of getting implementation. So I think we need to be creative about how we think about labels and how we mark it, and under which heading we mark it. Okay, we have some time, believe it or not. I thank all of my fellow panelists here for sticking so rigidly to the time. I was once at a conference where they had two podiums, and and you had 10 minutes for your paper. And once your 10 minutes were up, they just turned off the microphone and the next person started to talk. So it wasn't quite as bad as that here today, but, so you did very, very well. As I said, I think we have 10 minutes for questions or comments indeed. Have we any from the floor here? Any thoughts about policy brief and the next steps? No? Everybody understood everything, yeah? Ole.
Yeah, good to know from can't hear me, Christine. Sorry about that, but the rest of you can hear me. I would be interested in the third question as well, but leave that alone. The short question is, has the EU got return of investment for the 4 million they put in the vault 4 years ago? And if yes, everything is fine. If not, what do you do about it?
We would like to start on that.
Yes, that question.
I think the first answer to that question is that none of us speak for the EU in this European Commission. And I think they're looking for...
Don't run away from the...
No, I think that they're looking at return on investment is probably too strong or too narrow a measure of what they're looking for in all of this. I think what they have done is they've encouraged a lot of research, which is one of the main aims of the Horizon 2020 programme. What they've also done is they've facilitated the production of more or less useful tools, and I'm not just talking about our project, but across all of the projects in the mental health area. And I think they would, broadly speaking, view it as money well spent. If you look at it, as far as I'm aware, and you would have heard about this in the grapevine, no project has had money stopped on them. It's always been spent, and they're happy to see it spent. So maybe that answers your question at a very low level. I think for the broader sense of the word, if the Commission are undertaking to fund these projects and they're looking to produce products which are useful, which are available for use in practice and policy, or indeed in more encouraging further research, I think much of what the answer to that question remains open to doubt, because it depends on what happens after the projects as much as what happens within them. And this is why I think myself and Christine and Sabine and various others within the project have been making a plea to you all not to forget about it, not just to move on to the next thing. You've got to keep pushing this, and you've got to hand it over to somebody who can actually take up the ball and run with it. So I think that's ultimately what they're looking to encourage. It's also very difficult to measure when there is no objective resource to do it, but it's very much open to the rest of us. And it's a very rewarding experience, it must be said, to move beyond the boundaries of our own disciplines, to try to encourage others to take up the ball and run, and for us to collaborate in building these new networks to take everything forward. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I can say something. There are many other investments that you could see in the EU that probably you would say is not money well spent, right? So how did we get to that point? Maybe they spent $1 billion on some activity, and then you said, this wasn't money well spent. But the economic part, or an indicator, which is maybe a ROI, is not the only place where decision making, right? So there is, at times they ask the question, what should we do in this situation? So there is a moral part, there is an ethics part, there is an economic part, and there is a justice part, encompassing all these, what should we do? So when they decide, it is not only about the money, right? So the money is an aspect, which of course you can argue that maybe they shouldn't have spent that much. But that depends on who pays. I mean, if the EU is willing to pay that much to just get this minimal increment in the mental health of the population of the EU, they will justify it as economically beneficial and just go ahead and put out that money. But here, what we have done in HWEC is that we are looking at a player who has a very simple budget, probably an SME with a small budget, or maybe a public organization who has a capped budget. So what we have done is slightly different from the EU level, but at the same time we are looking at two different payers, right? So we have to be careful how we say, maybe this wasn't money well spent, or this was money well spent. So you have to bring other factors into consideration to finally make such a judgment.
Yes.
I was wondering about the organizational side of, whether in your experience this kind of anti-life intervention area has been more implemented in organizations, more probably bigger organizations, large organization in the HR department, rather than in the prevention, the safety and prevention units. And how important it is to work on the organizational level, like say designing a unit with a profile of activities that are with resources, developing internal competence, and deciding, for example, analyzing which kind of intervention can be developed and applied internally, which kind of intervention needs to be. So I was thinking about the organizational aspect that probably could help to give some, to clarify a bit who does what, when, in relation to with other stakeholders, internal or external.
If I may just repeat the question briefly for people, because maybe not everyone's heard, and perhaps I haven't got it 100% accurate, but the question basically is, what do you do about the organizational side of interventions? Is it more effective? Is it a better way of organizing interventions than focusing just on individual? Do you need to set up a kind of unit within HR or within occupational health, for example, or indeed some other department which is responsible for implementation, design and implementation of organizational type interventions? Is that a fair reflection?
Yes, and also I expect that if there is some kind of organizational structure, it's easier to define roles, relationship among different actors, internal and external actors. It would be easier to have resources, dedicated to this kind of sector area, and also it would help also to analyze more in detail which kind of competence are needed, which kind of competence needs to be developed internally, and what kind of intervention needs to be. It's more cost effective to buy, you take it from organizational, specialized like universities,
And again, if I may paraphrase, what is the mix of skills that you need, the mix of training, the mix of abilities and capacities that you need to effectively design a workspace mental health unit that is as flexible as that means? I will ask my colleagues. I do have some thoughts. Would anybody like to volunteer?
Maybe I can. I would answer yes, absolutely, in the sense that, and we have this like in our HWork roadmap, but even in the policy briefs, we know that an intervention project is more effective when you have a steering team, for example, a project champion. We need change drivers. We need responsible people that take care of the whole project for an intervention project to be effective. I think this is crucial to have support, and we have discussed this even this morning about the senior leadership support that you need to have. So I think the organizational aspect of the intervention itself is crucial for effectiveness. So yeah.
Richard, just a comment, but at a completely different level, in the sense that I think that there is an impact in the fact of policy brief on us, on people of HWork, because we learned how to write the policy brief. This is a competency skill that is not in our we're not familiar with, and I think that we have to thank all of us because the process of writing the policy brief was long. It was the first version, then the internal revision, a new version, then the external revision, and new version again. So I think it's a very long period, and I think that people have now a skill how to write a policy brief recommendation. So I think it's an important point of our approach.
Thank you for that, Bruno. I just want to very briefly respond to the question that was put up from above. In my own experience, I think it is, there's no single way to do this. It's an axiom in any sort of organizational intervention that you need to be top-led and bottom-supported. It needn't start at the top, it may start at the bottom, but you need both elements to come together. After that, I think the challenge becomes, how do you move from a project to a structure? How do you do it a second time, and a third time, and a fourth? That is a very difficult question, particularly if you are dealing with small organizations, because realistically, they can't do it on their own. They don't have the resource to continually regenerate these kinds of things. So you're looking at a collaboration between certainly smaller organizations and external suppliers of some sort, be they public or private sector, whatever. For larger organizations, it may well be popular, but they face the task also of re-energizing what they do on a periodic basis. So the best examples I have seen set out a kind of 5-year plan, and they involve the people as needs be, and they renew and train and retrain all the way through all of these implementations that they're doing. But that's rare. The big challenge, as I say, is to move from a project to practice, to ongoing practice. There's no single good way of doing that. Okay, any other comments? Because Christian looks like you're going to say something, no?
Yeah, I wanted to say something. Maybe I can speak. Yeah, I can speak loudly. Yeah, answer the question. Okay. Now? Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I want to comment on Paola's question as well. In the H project, we also implemented something that it wasn't originally part of the project, but we decided to also evaluate our practices, and we call it meta-process evaluation, so of the process of implementing the interventions. And we had good learnings, good reflection with the interventions partners. And one of those is related to your point, is that there were a lot of variations regarding organizations in terms of their interest in well-being, for example. For some of them, was a real concern for well-being, or for others, organization was to have a new brand, like a rebrand. Now we are an organization that is concerned about the well-being of our employees, and that also was related with the level of participation, because some of them, for example, for the organization that they had a real interest, they already have some processes regarding well-being. The implementation of the interventions ran very smoothly and was quite successful in that way. But with the other organizations, for example, that their main concern was at the very beginning to have this rebrand, they were very engaged at the very beginning of the project, but then this was a huge project, so we were working with them for 1 year or a year and a half, and we could notice the decline in their active participation. So we wonder what is the sustainability of our own initiatives. So we had some discussion with Richard about that, and how, for example, we can communicate that with public or private agencies, and in the way like, okay, you need to be prepared for that reality, and you need to be prepared to, you need to be able to adapt the communication of the importance of the well-being, depending on the level of development, let's say, of the organization regarding an area or the levels of interest regarding that topic. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to call a vote for the questions and answers. Unless, Christine, do you have something to add to any of these questions? Sorry, we can't hear you.
On mute.
You are mute.
Yeah.
No longer. No, I don't. I thought your answer to Ola's question was very much in line with what I was thinking, and the others. I don't think I'm really qualified to talk about the kind of organizational levels, etc., because that's not my field of expertise. So.
Okay, can I thank you all for your questions? Can I thank you all for your round table? And we have just one final piece to our session today. Let us to ask Tom to conclude. You have about 15 minutes if you want to take that long. Tom, it's all yours. The floor is yours.
There we go. Okay, so
We can't hear you.
You are muted.
The connection is not that well.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe now.
hopefully not anymore. Am I still? Or
Yeah.
you can hear me? Okay, perfect. So I was about to say that I think that indeed brevity is a challenge in briefs, but especially I think in summarizing the learnings of close to a dozen of briefs. So I'll do my best. And I think just to position myself a little bit, I was involved in reviewing a number of these briefs. So I've had this first-hand experience in this lengthy and challenging process that was referred to just early on in summarizing this diversity of findings across and experiences across the HWork project and translating them to very specific recommendations. And I think the diversity of these briefs really struck me. There were many stakeholders involved and also considered, but also quite a broad range of possible solutions to stimulate and facilitate workplace mental health. And I think that's definitely a strength. And this tailored communication of those briefs is something I can only applaud, and I think will probably be very helpful to realize lasting impact from this project. However, I think it's also important to be aware, and I think this was quite clear on the comments that have passed in the last hour or so, that briefs are obviously only briefs. They'll only get you this far, and so I think it's also comforting to see that these briefs provide tangible and concrete suggestions on how to start working on workplace mental health. And if you're talking about future uptake, I would definitely continue to link that to the innovation platform and also the roadmaps that are very tangible outputs from this project and that can help the organizations to take first steps, because I think the briefs will probably primarily induce awareness or help people think about the road ahead and the next steps that they are need and probably hopefully are willing to take. But like, for example, the parts of that innovation platform will probably be very helpful to help induce that change, to help people be more motivated, get more insights, have specific tools available to take those next steps. And so I think that's something you should continue to emphasize and continue to lean on over the course of the project, or the let's call it the valorization of the project's realizations. Looking at it a little bit more from a distance as well, my field of work primarily relates to technology within mental health care, and I think that workplace mental health is an especially exciting domain right now, but also in the next couple of years to come. Why, you may wonder? I hope you agree with me, but if you may wonder why, well, I think looking at the formal healthcare domain, we've seen an increase in rules and regulations and restrictions that have been implemented at the EU level. Think, for example, of the medical device regulation that are installed out of genuine best interests for patients to keep them safe for the potential harmful implications of using new technologies for mental health and a wide range of other possibilities. However, the downside is that it is a domain that is now particularly challenging to innovate. There's lots of red tape, there are many obstacles, and to a lesser extent, I think, from my experience, these are present in the workplace mental health. So it's an interesting place to start working on mental health, not just within the workplace, but for society as a whole, to really start exploring what we can do. And because there are structures in place, because you have that organizational fit, especially if it's an organization willing to invest in workplace mental health, I really hope that in the next couple of years, and using some of the learnings from the Horizon project, from H-Work essentially, that we're going to see workplace mental health leading the way in a wide variety of tools and services and interventions that in time perhaps will only find their way to formal mental health care. Thinking aloud, for example, both machine learning, AI, some of the other examples that have been discussed in the briefs as well, even non-technological interventions that go beyond the common and established paths, I think will probably be very interesting to see how they will evolve in the coming years. And that's going back to like the initial question, like, do you get a return on investment? I think you really need to look at this from a very broad perspective. For me, workplace mental health is the starting point, and it can inspire and facilitate change way broader than just within the workplace, and hopefully to society as a whole. I said I would aim to keep it brief, so I'm going to wrap it up here. I think that those were my main suggestions and learnings, and it was a pleasure actually being able to review some of your work. And again, congratulations on a job well done. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John. I think Sabine wants to close the meeting.
If you
Do we
try
want
to
try
a last attempt. Okay, yeah, it's
Yes, okay, right. Oh.
I'll speak very quick because the microphone does it now.
No, it
it's
doesn't
not
work.
working.
Here, another one. Another.
Come on, we are playing.
Go.
Yeah.
I thank you very much for a very interesting roundtable. I thank Tom. Thank you very much, Tom, for your contribution. You were also an extraordinary external reviewer. Christine, also, thank you very much. We love to work with you, and we will continue to work with you, of course. And then the panelists, of course, you worked so hard on the policy briefs. Thank you very much. And let it be a good experience, and well, maybe we hear from you for other policy briefs. I think the audience, thank you very much for your interest, and yeah, that's it for us, and also, of course, for Richard. Thank you for moderating, and I now think we are going to have a coffee. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. We are going to have a coffee, Thomas.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.